There was a pitter-pattering all about, particularly on the edges, like the floor. It was outside the room, and I don't mean something like physical wind or rain. Looking into the mirror, I saw three groups of opaque white ruffles. I know that sounds like clouds, but the opaqueness was not the only reason why I do not say that these were clouds. And there was a perforated pink upon the floor. And there was some movement about. Pink filled the room more than any other color. It's like it crossed itself too. First, I felt the shudder down the front of me, then at once upon the sides, and then the back. And slowly I felt a stillness, a pleasant throbbing. And following the final reading was like layers of yellow on the sides of the space. Robert Graves did not get that Islam accepts the different sides of nature and doesn't try to disparage the female for being different, for being varied. Made sure to protect her in that regard, and didn't refer to God as male or solar or linear. Over those things, certainly. Over time, over space, over matter. Now, this book has a lot more reference to human sacrifice and all that stuff than pretty much anything I've read. One of its closing stories is about a suicide. And this suicide, was it some sort of spiritual prompting? On some level, likely. Sometimes things happen when those promptings aren't present, but then again, they were previously, and they embed themselves in the mind. We could say that the technology and machinery making some aspects of life more fruitful or easier can change the theology. Right now, what we're seeing is more, structural, right? It's about politics and, identity politics and all that sort of stuff. But there are people who are stepping away from, the idea that certain things were driven out by the Judeo-Christian cult. And how we see that, whether we're talking about 3 or 9 or which inflection of the 3, you sort of do have the same sort of religion over and over and over again. And then perhaps maybe you could narrow some of those lines down into saying maybe there are only two religions. Or some people say one, depending on your definition of religion, right? Once you see one myth in terms of another myth, and you try to follow not so much the spiritual authority or claims of prophecy and what to make of them, as much as the influence, the meaning and purpose being translated over, a lot of things coalesce, condense, align. Robert Graves was not always understood in what he was trying to put forth. And like what he admired, he also had a variety of qualities that people might think are, contradictory. But sometimes they're not contradictory. They're just different aspects of personality that maybe they're not quite so noticeable unless they're apart, right? And sometimes, just like ideas of male entities and a genderless God, sometimes there was things said to be revelation. And it is interesting to think of, how things bounced about from the Germany area and the Ireland, Scotland, England area. And, if people fought under a queen or a king, it was the same sort of people who fought, really. So sometimes the theological or political or psychological issues don't quite, show the difference that people might think they would. I think that things can mix and translate even more so than Robert Graves has seemed to portray in this book. But certainly for him, his expression and focus on poetry is or was unique.